and a researcher, and as Julie's work as a writer and a painter. So as we've kind of launched Art Science Complex, and Art Science Complex has kind of like, gone into the realm of kind of interdisciplinary work and the time that we spent with other people, we've realized the kind of like the fact that the reason the complex was created was because we still at this point need to kind of distinguish in general the difference between art and science. And the complex is basically the fact that we understand that there is no need to make the distinction, but it helps us explain the idea that that distinction will eventually become obsolete. So anyway, what is it we're talking about today? The idea is, what are the consequences of underlying principles, and why do they matter, and why they might matter now? So I thank you, P. Look who it is.
Hi. Sorry, I was caught in a torrential downpour and an hour and a half of MTA crap. Yeah. Hi, Penguin. Hi, Puddle.
Hi. Okay. And look what we have. We have a chilled teas.
Chilled, because somebody thoughtfully chilled it.
Yes.
And the mint are particularly good chilled. They all are.
Yeah.
I actually haven't had a jasmine chilled. I have a bruise on my foot.
Well, here.
Thanks.
Okay. So anyway, one of the most important books, certainly to me, and one of the things I kind of go back to time and time again is, as we've seen before, my well-worn cover of David Hume's Treatise of Human Nature. And I often will talk about what I would call the project of skepticism. But in fact, in the book, he talks about this, and I think it's a very important thing, and kind of talks to us specifically about what we're going to talk about tonight. He talks about the idea that in the case of like skepticism, this is actually a program by which he kind of thinks it's important to kind of tease out whatever potential utility there is that we can obtain in terms of truth. If we are to kind of, and I think reason why principles are so important now is there is a certain circumstance that exists in our kind of world where I believe there's an attempt to kind of like dismiss the idea of truth, dismiss the idea of principles altogether. So therefore, I think it's important to kind of understand why certain things are fought for, why certain things are valuable. So going back to the beginning of part 4 of The Skeptical and Other Systems of Philosophy, the first section, one of the few first paragraphs in, there is no algebraist nor mathematician so expert in his science as to place entire confidence in any truth immediately upon his discovery of it, or regard it as anything but a mere probability. Every time he runs over his proofs, his confidence increases, but still more by the approbation of his friends. And by that, we know approbation meaning praise and acknowledgement, understanding. So the utility starts to grow, and it's raised to its utmost perfection by the universal assent and applause of the learned world. Now, 'tis evident that this gradual increase of assurance is nothing but the addition of new probabilities. So what happens is, as we talked about the idea of like the kind of like the idea of a principle within other principles, that it's not completely existing without a context, as more probabilities come to kind of lend more credibility by looking at different perspectives, your confidence in your speculations, your formulation grows, and is derived from the constant union of causes and effects according to past experience and observations. We'll read more of that on Sunday. But basically, at this moment, I think it's important, especially now with a lot of things being under siege, to be able to understand why we fight for them and why they're important. So anyway, that's the introduction to this week's discussion, this week's rumination.
Sorry, well, I think what's very interesting, if you look at, how should I say, the personality and the patterns that surround scientific research, and I don't mean the social sciences and things that are hard or impossible to replicate, like 90% of the psychology studies are unreplicatable, which is really pretty scary. But there are patterns, and I would say expectations are the precursor to belief structures.
Hmm.
And by that, I mean that oftentimes, even in so-called, how should I say, you know, impartial scientists, there are predictives in full operation. There are expected outcomes very often. And there are patterns that certain research takes. And if a scientist goes rogue, and they're not really going rogue in the way of a pirate ship, and they're not doing a Burt Lancaster and Nick Cravat. Is your eye okay?
No, it's doing an eye patch.
Oh,
Okay.
that's so funny.
I have a better idea.
Oh, just be careful. That actually looks sharp. That is kind of very dashing.
Yes.
But there are these given expectations. I'm going to give one example, and I'll talk about this more on, I always call it late Saturday night. Bruce likes to call it Sunday morning. It is both, actually. It's the Janus head of temporal illusion. So, cephalopod research. A lot of people, even in the field, have preconceptions about the abilities and the capabilities of 10-armed cephalopods. Yes, 10-armed. So squid and cuttlefish are 10-armed, not 8-armed cephalopods like octopuses. And everybody groups them all and really thinks of the octopus. And yes, it's incredibly sensitive. It's a beautiful, beautiful, I'd say it's a beautiful mind. They have a really intricate mind. And for a creature that lives for such a short time to be that intelligent is really incredibly tragic. About a year or two.
That's all?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so sad. I thought they were kind of like,
sad.
it's funny. The more sophisticated the animal, the
longer they live.
Well,
right?
in general, with the exception of humans,
yeah.
most long-lived creatures are actually quite sophisticated,
like
quite
elephants,
turtles,
and dolphins, and turtles.
Yeah.
Anyway, so people have.
I would have assumed they lived like I was figuring like a long time.
Everyone thinks.
It's so sad.
It's really, really, really sad. But here is something that people didn't give them any credit for, because they don't have adorable kitten faces, and they are really cute, and little puppy faces. People don't ascribe importance. Yes, that is so cute.
Yeah.
Penguin
can be very bossy.
She is. Important human emotions to a cephalopod. And I just read some studies and saw a fascinating show called Science View on NHK World, our favorite Japanese channel, which, by the way, has a lot of real hardcore science and nature shows.
I bet they drink a lot of tea's tea there.
They drink a lot of tea's tea with wagashi. I'll get into that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So there was a fascinating study using squid, a number of them. Squid get angry, they sulk, they get happy, they have friendships, they get sad, they get jealous, they get agitated. And here is how we know. They get very moody.
Do they brood? Are they brooding?
Yeah, like you.
Exactly.
Yeah, Bruce is a Byron-esque figure.
I am.
Anyway, which makes him dark and alluring. Yes. So, but here is how they found out. They don't communicate the way people do. They communicate with their skin and through color.
Oh, I love that. Like Indian people do.
Yes, yeah. Indian people from
use
India.
Indian people from India use their skin and color to communicate.
Yeah. So
are they cephalopods?
Yeah. But complex series of emotions, textures.
Indian people are also incredibly complex and sophisticated.
That is true.
That is true.
And patterns and pulses and grids. And I mean, really complex things. I'll get more into it, but this blasts all the preconceptions, and yet despite the fact that these are replicatable studies done in Tokyo by well-respected Japanese scientists, people refuse to believe them.
Interesting.
And this would further everybody in many fields.
Interesting.
And cuttlefish also have a very
Love cuttlefish.
sophisticated, and they communicate through pulses with complicated emotions.
Do you remember?
Yeah.
I think there was in China. Was it in China? There was some place that we used to go where there was a
tank of
cuttlefish, and there was one specifically
Yes,
that always recognized you and came and kind of danced with you.
it did.
Remember that? Was
On Elizabeth Street in
yes,
Chinatown.
yes. And it would kind of like, it had
Yeah.
those, it would have like radiating lights, like a disco ball.
Yeah.
And it would come over and it would kind of come to, it would see you and come directly to you and make that, it would go like this. It would go
It was
like that.
literally talking
And it
to
would,
me.
yes. And it would do it
Yeah.
every single time you
course.
came. Didn't do it to me
That's because it had a crush on me.
for good reason.
Thank you. But I mean, this is but I don't want to, but I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
No, I mean, honestly, I think one of the things that's happening, like and again, I thank you to our subscribers. We're now at 275. I mean,
we
it's
had
really quite
276 and some person unsubscribed,
That's
which I think is crazy.
275. And in the last couple of episodes, we're seeing like numbers we had never really imagined, you know, like in terms of the people who viewed and liked and stuff.
Oh, actually, what, 33 or 34 views?
Yeah, but I mean, like, you know,
really
it's really, I am so happy that people are kind of in finding, you know, interest in what we're doing, and the numbers seem to be expanding, and so it shows we're doing something right. Or Julie's doing something right, and they're not really, you know. But the thing is, if you don't feel like you can't contribute either in the chat or kind of leave a comment, because I mean, I really feel like as if, you know, we have our group of people that we speak to on a regular basis, because like I said, there's certain institutions in the city where we have followings, and that these people kind of come up and we talk with them on a regular basis. But you know, anyone who's listening, you know, feel free to comment, feel free to kind of contact, you know, so we can continue the conversations. Last 3 weeks have been full of really interesting conversation. So, you know, I want to make sure that we appreciates that, you know, and again, you know, thanks to our sponsor, Teas Tea, for everything. I mean, there we go.
We absolutely love,
you know,
this is our favorite beverage, hands down.
Oh, no, and again, like we were drinking it before.
Yeah. I mean, we have been drinking it for absolutely years.
Exactly. It's true. And I mean, I think it's really, but again, so thank you to everyone, you know, and again, I think what's happening is, you know, we're getting more, I think what's happening is we're kind of finding our stride too, in the fact that, you know, we put out a project. I will, you know, make my point. You will kind of bring, you know, your understanding, your appreciation of what it is. And then we'll kind of have a kind of wrap up. In fact, here's a thought. We do the topic, we do a discussion, we kind of present our points. And then at the end, maybe in the last 10, 15 minutes, we do a summation and we kind of do a kind of back and forth. You know, I think that would be really cool if we just kind of say, you know, we make our presentations after the original, you know, kind of point, and then we have a kind of back and forth, which is kind of happening. But I think if we made time for it, so we actually had time to kind of, you know, talk about that, I think that'd be value. Because I remember one of the things that is important is that my point of view, Julie's point of view, the idea is not to adopt the thinking of anyone else. I mean, we saw that, you know, so clearly in Emerson last week, is the fact that like you can't live in the times of someone else or let other people dictate with their expectations for you. We're in a point where we're standing on the precipice of a new time, of a new era. And I think the reality is, if these people or certain people want to be stuck in the past in their own neurotic obsessions, whatever they are, let them. It's not our point to, it's not the purpose of other people to drag people with you. It's more important that you kind of satisfy your own desires
and raise people up.
Yeah, well, if raise them up or whatever, I look at it this way. I mean, I think that, you know, the idea of genius is to basically go where the, you know, compelling issues are and to kind of make compelling arguments for them. So, you know, that's kind of what we're doing here. That's what we enjoy. and we want to continue that. So anyway, so we'll see you on Sunday. Yes,
I
say,
have
say,
a
say, say.
final words.
Say.
Well, on Sunday, I will be talking about trichomes in Arabidopsis thaliana, which is a model plant, a little beautiful flowering mustard seed, and plant immune systems, which are fascinating, which feed into this entire thing. Hi, Penguin.
Hi. She's very attentive.
And she's very curious.
Yeah, she's incredibly curious. In fact, most people don't know she's actually a descendant of the Guel family, the Catalan industrial family that basically was, was the patron for Gaudí. And
as in Guel Park.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I mean, she is. In fact, I showed someone a picture of her mother, who was actually a great pianist and was a great educator of music. And I think that's where some of Penguil's imagination and curiosity comes from. Anyway, so the realm of ideas is free to all, and it's to the benefit of all for us to keep us exactly right like that.
Precisely.